Welcome back to Open Line tonight. We are talking about recovery from addiction tonight. If you have questions or calls, please call, or questions you would like to ask about this, call us tonight. 615-737-PLUS is the number to call. Two wonderful gentlemen here to take those questions tonight. Pastor Adam Comer and Pastor Bruce Stanley from Spring to Life Recovery, a facility in Cannon County that we've been talking about, really a faith-based recovery center. And I want to talk about the calls and emails that come into our newsroom that will just break your heart. And I know you guys get them too from parents or loved ones who say, my child has got to get into a place where they're going to die. My greatest hope right now is they end up in jail because I can't find a bed for them in a facility, and a jail is the safest place for them. The need is so great right now, isn't it?
It's the need is extremely, and we could talk statistics inside of that, but the amount of people who are actually addicted to drugs versus the amount of people who are going to programs, but even just the devastating statistics, like you said, my son's going to die, and that's a reality.
Yeah.
From the state of Tennessee in 2016, Department of Health put out 1,631 people died of drug overdose, which is on their death certificate.
Wow. In
2016, and that number is probably not as accurate as I think it could be, but that's mind-blowing. That's one state. In this nation, the estimated number is going to be 64,000 people last year. And to put that into perspective, in the Vietnam War era, 14 years, 58,000 men and women, brave men and women, gave their lives and died in 14 years of a war. And last year in this country, 64,000 people on their death certificate is going to say drug overdose. This is mine. That's 175 people a day. And if you take that in any other category, let's say that it came out every morning on the news that 175 people died in a plane crash every single day, we would, as a nation, would rise up.
Sure.
This isn't working. Something's got to change. What's going on? Red flags going out, and that's the reality of where we are. And when it comes to overdose deaths, and so it is an epidemic, and it is killing people. And there is no race, there is no class, there is no gender that it discriminates against.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up, because every show I do like this, or every news story we tell, I feel it is so necessary to say, get rid of the stereotypes. There is not a stereotype here. It is the soccer mom, it is the teenager, it is the highfalutin business guy. I mean, it really touches every walk of life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We've had everybody from the age of 18, you have to be at least 18 to come into our program, but up to age 65, and anybody from a lawyer to a professional football player to a doctor, teachers, pastors. It affects everybody. It's not your guy hanging out in the street anymore. And it hasn't been for a long time, really.
No, it really hasn't. And I want to ask this question. I mean, there is so much news about, the drug manufacturers and how we got to this point. And there are a lot of ways we got to this point. But what is the other, maybe the heart issue, as you see as pastors? What's going on with people's hearts that has gotten us to this point where so many people are addicted to something? What do you think it is? Well,
as a pastor, I could explain that, and from that perspective, and just here in America, I think we're so culturalized to anything goes and to each his own, and whatever it is that I need to make me happy. In the prescription part of it, I think it's just been over-prescribing pain medicine that people have just accepted as the norm, and have become, they just look at it different in terms of, well, I feel a little pain, so I'm going to take this, and I can go to the dentist and get prescribed an opioid when I really just need some ibuprofen. And so people have become accustomed to this type of stuff, and that's the prescription part of it. The other is, I think from prohibition with alcohol to the legalizing of marijuana, drug use and that type of lifestyle is becoming more and more acceptable. And so we almost act shocked when we find out that people become addicted to it. It's like, why can't you just stop? And so, but there's been a lot of that going on from generation to generation. But I think even now, it's almost like it's just become more and more normal, I think, for people to take medications, to drink, and to even use recreational drugs.
Yeah, and I'd add to that, I think for me personally, as the addiction started, it was to numb physical pain. But it soon turned into numbing everything. I don't want to feel and I have a right not to feel, and it became a numbing. And biblically, as pastors, that's where we go, and it's not a surprise to God about addiction. America didn't learn how to solve addiction in 1934. God talks about it in the Bible with drunkenness and being sober-minded and these kind of things. And so when we replace what God says is His glory for cheap substitutes to make me feel or to, and there's nasty things, and this is a very touchy subject because we see guys that come in that things have happened to them in their past by the very people that were supposed to protect them. And so I don't say that flippantly. I say that and understanding what's going on and the reality of this world and this nation. But we're never supposed to numb that with a cheap substitute. God says that He can come in and you delight yourself in the Lord, and He'll give you the desires of your heart and new desires, and that you don't want to numb this, and actually you are okay with your image of who you are, because your image is no longer defined by others or what you think of yourself. It's defined by what God says about you. And that you're more than a conqueror, and that you're beauty from ashes, and it's an incredible, that was my story.
But that can take a lot of time to get from one point to the other point, and you guys are not a 30-day rehab facility.
No. Our new curriculum, and I think even statistics will say the longer that someone will give themselves in a program, the better. In our new curriculum that we're launching, we're seeing that just for a phase 1, we're going to ask you to commit to 42 days. Phase 2 would be 84 days, and so trying to convince people to stay as long as you can is a kind of a fight in itself. Sometimes I got to get back to work because I'm sober now and I've got all these bills.
Well, and even the court systems are set up to a 30-day increment, and insurance companies especially 30-day increments, and how long you can actually pay for the program. Those numbers, by the way, that showed 60% success rates for our students who've been out of the program for a year or more. More than 85% of that were from students who were in the program 60+ days. And so I think I kind of put it to the students like this when they come into the program. It takes about a week for you to shed where you come from, because we get guys from all over the United States and from overseas. And just to be okay with, hey, I'm up on Short Mountain in the middle of Tennessee, and I've left all that behind, the sickness that comes with the transition of what I was doing to getting clean and eating healthy. And then a week prior to leaving. So the fears of what's going to happen next, what's the aftercare look like, am I going to be successful, I have to go back and deal with these things that I've left behind. You really only got about 2 weeks in there that you focus on trying to change your life. And so from that perspective, 30 days just isn't enough time for somebody to feel comfortable enough to just be honest, get things out, deal with them, discover what could be next.
Let me also ask you this, and this probably comes from the journalist side of me, but we've had this opioid epidemic, and of course when you have something like this, business people are smart and they respond, and it seems like there has been, even though there's still a lack of beds that are needed, there's a lot of addiction recovery places now, and they advertise, and can you find bad places? Is that a problem?
No, I think there's definitely questions that people should ask, and like you have. Tell me what a day looks like. Where is your facility, and these kind of things. But a lot of times I have a hard time unless I've known or researched, which I have, or have relationship referring people to certain halfway houses, just because of the horror stories that I've heard, that they're money mills. Someone who's maybe good-hearted or good intention, and put someone in charge just to run it. It could be a dangerous thing, and so I have a hard time doing that. But I also want to kind of comment on the beds availability versus people coming in. For us as a ministry, we can't advertise, in the aspect of, hey, we're here, come, so that could be part of the problem. That's why this show is such an incredible thing, that we're here, we're talking about this program, and we know it works. One, because no one can convince me it doesn't, because I went through it. you know, and I believe in it, but also just the surveys. So being able to say, hey, here we are in Woodbury. I know you've never heard of Woodbury, but it's here, and man, there's some good things happening there. So.
Yeah, I think just from the insurance side of things, you're always going to have people that are taking advantage of that stuff, and institutions that care more about the money aspect of it than the helping somebody. So doing your research, finding out what it is that they offer. One of the things that I feel like, well, I know our program does, and I don't even like calling it a program. It's an experience that you go through that helps you learn how to grow past these things that have troubled you. And so being biblically based, one of the things we don't do is what most, I would say probably 95% of all institutions or recovery places or programs is a 12-step program. We don't do that. This has been the status quo for a long time, and those percentages that we talked about earlier of success rates, they've been stagnant for decades. And so if we keep looking to those types of things that are going to solve our problems, I'm not trying to say they don't work. I went through 12-step programs. They did a lot of good for me in helping me being honest, looking at myself that I'm not the only one, being around other people I can talk to, these types of things. But I mean, any institution or any program that would stay within the status of what it's been for decades, knowing that it's not moving the needle, if you're going to a program or institution that supports that, you definitely want to look at other things that they're doing besides that to see how effective they can be in the recovery rate.
And we have to take a quick break, but in our last break, you were telling me about this very unique partnership between the state and the faith community, and you guys are really in on that, really on the ground floor of it. So when we come back, we're going to talk about that. And I want to remind you, this is Open Line. Michael, I know we lost you. You'd called, and if you want to call in, I'll get right to your call this time. I apologize for that. But we are taking your calls, your questions, your comments about recovery to addiction. Stay with us.